Hi, Ingrid.
How are you?
Okay, how are you doing?
Good.
Staying cool?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not so bad.
Well, if you stay inside, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. How was your vacation?
It was really great. Yeah. It was nice to get away. We were on a pond in the Adirondacks in a backcountry area for 5 nights.
Beautiful.
It's great.
Yeah. Which pond? Where were you?
The St. Regis Pond.
Is that way up there?
Yeah, it's up near Saranac Lake and Paul Smith's College.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice up there.
It's really nice up there. Yeah. Yeah, we went there 5 years ago. It was really nice. So it was nice to go back. Hi, everyone. Let's see. Hello.
Huh, there's a lot of people here. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Hey.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, Rose.
So we're waiting for Hope and
Susan.
Susan, and Janelle's not going to make it. And I don't know about Jim. I saw him last month. I ran into him and I encouraged him to try Zoom and just try joining the meeting, but he seemed very reluctant. So
He hasn't been to a lot of meetings before the pandemic.
That's right.
Yeah, but who wants to go to a Zoom meeting if they can avoid it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at you rocking in your nice place with plants and everything.
It's nice. Sunroom.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I made the banjo behind me on the wall myself.
Oh, cool.
My husband, my late husband, made the dulcimer. And that's my saxophone behind me.
Nice.
Cool.
All right. Well, should we get started? Should we wait another minute? We are live streaming to YouTube. Neil helped me update. Apparently, before every meeting, that information needs to be updated. And it's a weird setting thing. Yeah. So
they're not in danger of being Zoom bombed if you go on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's one.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think when you're on YouTube, you can see it, but you can't interact with it. You're just viewing.
That's right. Yeah. I think we should just get started. Hopefully, Hope can join us in a minute or two. So I'll call the meeting to order. Let me just click the record button just in case. All right, so the meeting's called to order at 7:33. And we have myself, Ingrid Heckel, Rose Rudnitsky, Jonathan Yoni Schwartz, Kenji Tierney, Ted Nitza, and Rich Whitney, and Amanda Gatto, our planning board liaison. And the first item is approval of the June 10th meeting minutes. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. I had a few minor typo corrections. Let's see. Okay, so these were all minor little things. The correction of the Rose Lane. Actually, I think there's just a couple Colette, some names, research on pollinators specifically. Okay, it's like Susan is joining us. So those were just a few minor things I caught. We could wait for Susan to join us. Let's see. Hi, Susan. Okay. So could I have a motion to approve the June 10th meeting minutes with these edits?
I so move.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So then I can stop sharing this. Hope was appointed so Janelle formally stepped down from the board, and although she hopes to continue as a liaison for the Climate Smart Communities work, and Hope is now a member. I need someone to serve as secretary for this meeting.
Yeah. I imagine Hope will be here soon, but she and I are both going to volunteer so that she can transition to it later on. But
Okay.
I'll officially do it this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. And I'll follow up with Hope about that. I've just been I was out and I've been really busy catching up on stuff. That'd be really great if she can help us do that. Okay, so should we move along to planning board business? And Amanda, do you want to share any updates? Oh, there hasn't been a meeting, right?
No, our meeting is scheduled for July 13th. The Rose Lane project the applicant has not brought it back again, so that one's still out there pending. Homeland Towers, we did not receive the Barton and Laguidis was supposed to do a EAF Part 2 draft for the planning board. We haven't received it yet, so they are not on the agenda for the 13th. We expect they will be on the agenda for the 27th. And that project, so the planning board declared themselves lead agency, so we will be doing the seeker, and we need to be doing that. Apparently the process, the way it works, because they have requested a variance, which the building inspector, code enforcement officer will have to decide on. And once that decision is taken, if it's not what they want, they appeal it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. That takes place independently, but they cannot make their final decision until the planning board has completed seeker. It's all kind of, this is kind of convoluted process. So the planning board needs to proceed with doing that, even though currently the application does not comply with code, so we wouldn't be able to do anything further. So we'll be working on that. And the shot clock thing is under discussion because they submitted the application quite a while ago. If that application had been deemed complete, the shot clock would have expired already, but our consultants and engineers and so forth asked for additional information. They felt it was not complete. So that's still in the works. So what the final shot clock date is up in the air a little bit, but it's sometime probably in the fall to give us time to get all this done. But it does need to keep moving along. So our meeting on the 13th will be just like this one. It'll be a Zoom meeting with only the participants who have Zoom access actively participating. And I'm not sure how they're going to be handling public comments, I guess the way that the town board has done it, where people request to be in. So I don't know what will, I haven't heard from anyone if anyone's done that or how that's going to go. But anyway, so whoever comes from the EnCB for Homeland Towers, it will not be an official agenda item for planning board discussion at the 13th. But I do, definitely expect it would be on the 27th. Trans Hudson has returned with a revised plan. And I hope you guys got to see the documents and the drawings. So the drawings don't give a tremendous amount of detail other than the location of where the new 5 structures would be. And one of the things they do say is that they are open to rerouting the Empire State Trail along in their property along the back, along, adjacent to the thruway, and then coming out at Du Bois. And they're also proposing to put in as support for that a parking area and a restroom. Who's going to maintain that and all that is, something obviously would have to be determined. But they are also, so they have redesigned the buildings to be in compliance with the code for mixed use building zone there as far as the footprint, the bulk requirements, but they do not want to comply with the height requirements. So that'll be some discussion as well. Yeah, then the other things that are on the agenda for that meeting, there's an accessory apartment. I think we talked about this last time. It's on Brookside. As far as the wetlands inspector and the building inspector are concerned, it meets requirements. They do intend to put in, I guess, another septic system to support that. And they have a permit that was issued by the Ulster County Board of Health that will expire in October. So it's a 2-year, it was good for 2 years. So I guess they're anxious to get moving on that. And was there anything else? There might be a preconceptual about a lot division on Butterville and Rose Lane. It's a lot that runs parallel to Rose Lane. It's like a long, skinny lot. It's about 12 acres now, and they want to subdivide it into 3 lots.
Yeah, we provided comments on that, or like preliminary comments about the potential issues on that lot. But there was never a meeting where they were presented.
So they haven't actually come to us. This is still a potential preconceptual without a date fixed. So we will need to go back and just, I would need to go back and pull those up so that we can discuss those with them. But we've never actually had a face-to-face meeting with them yet. But it has turned up again with a request for a preconceptual meeting, but no date set yet. So that's just the other thing that's on our plate right now that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So I think what I have
that was a Bean property, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's a long, skinny lot, and they want to put a lot in front of it and a lot behind it. And I assume then they'll go from 1 dwelling to 3 along.
Yeah, and there's potential wetlands there.
Okay, well, that's something we definitely need to make sure they're aware of, that what the restrictions would be, or what they would have to take into account if they tried to figure out how they would want to use those properties.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I've not been notified that it's taking place on the 13th, because then we would have been told we had to come early, because the preconceptuals always take place 15 minutes or so before the start of the real meeting. And they're not, generally open to the public or anything. They're just they're for a chance for people to understand and hear what things like this that they might not be aware of or not know they need to think about. So I think I have down that Ted is going to cover the 13th, meeting on the 13th.
That's right. And
So
Susan, you had volunteered for the 27th.
Is that
okay?
I have Susan down for the 27th.
You're muted, Susan. Do you need me to unmute you?
I just need to find out, I guess, before then, and even for the 13th, how I can observe. So I'd ask the town about that, and then how I can.
Yeah, the way it works is Pat Atkins will send you the invitation to the Zoom meeting.
The 27th one.
Yeah, and then you'll go join it just like this meeting.
Okay, and the 13th, if I want to observe it, I know I can't be a part of it, but if I want to observe it, how do I do that?
There should be a link from the agenda on the website to stream the meeting.
Just go to the planning board. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Now,
thanks.
is Susan the 27th or am I?
I
Oh,
had
both?
Susan down.
Okay.
I think you had volunteered for the end of June and then
Okay.
that canceled, right?
Mhm.
But we are looking, I think we should line up volunteers at least for August 10th and maybe for the 24th, but at the minimum for August 10th.
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay,
I'll do the 24th.
great. Thank you.
I totally expect that those meetings will be, we'll have Homeland Towers and Trans Hudson at the very least,
Yeah.
because both of those projects, the applicants are very anxious to move on with them, so.
So should we start with Homeland Towers or with CVS? I mean, the CVS is going to be on the agenda next week.
Yeah, I think that's when you should start with, since it's been kind of out of everybody's mind for a while, and now we've got this new drawing, and there you go.
All right. Yeah, so there's now four commercial buildings and then this fifth bathroom structure for the Empire State Trail. And it sounds like this one would be I can't actually.
Which one's a restaurant and which one's a retail?
Yeah, number 4 is the bank and number 1. So the one on the corner is the restaurant.
Right.
This one.
Wait, number 4 is the bank? Is the restaurant?
Number 4 is the bank and number
That's
1.
already there? That's the bank that's there?
Yeah,
There's no bank there now.
there's no bank there. There's nothing
So
there.
they're putting up another bank next to the bank that's there?
There's no bank. This is the potential CVS site that's on the corner of 299 and North Putt. It's all forest right now.
There is
Right,
one.
but the other
there's a
bank is right next to it.
There's a bank
Bank
by,
of America. The Bank of America is right there.
Well, it's down the road a ways.
Yeah, that's down the road at the Tops Plaza.
Right, and then there's the other bank. So there's 2 banks right next to that third bank. Okay,
There's a lot of banks in New Paltz.
Yeah.
right. The Lent Bank.
Yeah,
Banks and pizza places.
Yeah.
right. Anyway, I noticed what jumped out to me immediately was that they spent their whole letter kind of arguing about the importance of having a drive-through restaurant and the height requirements just not being economically viable, you know, for them leasing these buildings. But they completely ignore other aspects of the new zoning, such as the 30-foot vegetated buffer along the property boundary with the throughway. They've decided to propose routing the Empire State Trail right in through the middle of that. And there's no mention or acknowledgement of tree preservation or preservation of existing grades, you know, to reduce unnecessary cut and fill and preserve vegetation and topography. So like there are whole sections of the design standards that they chose to ignore, and they need to be brought up in the meeting on Monday.
Right. I mean, this drawing is to me is very sketchy. It shows no, I mean, I can't see where there's any trees, or they say they'll comply with the landscaping requirement. It's not clear where exactly. The new zoning parking requirements are the maximums required, as opposed to what used to be a minimum requirement of so many spaces per so much square footage. So they haven't really addressed if they have ways to to consider reducing some of those as well. But the two things that they're asking to, their wording is waive, is the drive-through for the restaurant, which is not allowed in the zoning. It's not permitted. The drive-through for the bank is, and then the lack of second stories on all the buildings. That's another requirement. So
Why is there a requirement for second stories? I'm just curious.
This is the mixed use business zone. And so the idea is that it would have the opportunity to combine commercial retail of different types, retail or commercial use on the first floor, and on the second floor could be anything from residential to office to other retail, any other commercial use. But the idea was to try to, you know, if you're going to have buildings like this that are similar to what's along Main Street and down into the village, where you have 2 and even 3-story buildings, that you have something that sort of looks like that, and it also allows you to have more usage of the footprint. So you're not sprawling out with many single-story buildings. You're incorporating and putting more density in the buildings that you do have, so that you get more use out of the buildings that you put in. So that's, that was a feature that the committee that worked on this zoning put in place, that the town board, approved. So it was part of why this particular zone was called mixed use, as opposed to highway business. It's also not clear to me for this little bathroom that they want to put in for the trail, like what does that tie into? The other, does it all tie into one septic system? Oh, no.
Well, no,
wait.
they were granted, the
Right.
village apparently said they would grant sewer.
Water and sewer, yeah. So they've said they're open to, So that would be another thing, is so where does all of that piping go? But yeah, I mean, nothing about the clearing and grading has been addressed here. And you still see they've got a roadway coming in, cutting across the Empire State Trail and off of 299 coming in, but all exits go out onto Putt, where they will allow a left-hand turn as well as a right-hand turn, and also an entrance. So there's a lot of traffic flow here with all these arrows going, every which way to get to all these different, because of the drive-throughs, having all this drive-through.
Right. Can I ask a question, Amanda?
Sure.
I'm just curious, because they gave that whole explanation because of the virus now that this is needed. These drive-throughs are needed. So you thinking this plan just came up after that? This was like their this is how they can get away with some of the things that they're planning because they're claiming it's because of the virus now?
I think the plan was always that. And that's just, perhaps they're hoping that has some significance. I don't know.
Can I just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. So when I was reading through their letter, they were referring to everybody knows this and everybody knows that, and there's lots of evidence of this and that, but they didn't actually provide any evidence in support of any of the things that they were claiming. I think they just kind of expected us to go along with that. And I think if they're going to make these kind of broad statements and claims, like ever since COVID, no businesses would ever consider buying a franchise if it didn't have a drive-through. I mean, that's a pretty significant assertion. And I think if they're going to make that kind of assertion, we want to see some evidence to support it. Do they have, either they've got data to support it or they can't make that kind of claim?
Well, I think they were trying to, as you say, be influential. I think they were trying to.
That's fine. They can say whatever they want, but if they don't provide evidence, then you should reject it out of hand. Support your argument,
It could
or
be
don't
opinion and not fact.
Yeah.
it's just pure speculation.
Yeah, and just one other comment about the bathroom, because when I worked at Huguenot Street, we used to leave the bathroom open so that people that were biking or whatever could use the bathroom. And we had to lock the bathrooms. People were taking showers, it became disgusting. And we maintained it. Like, who's maintaining a bathroom there? And how do you keep squatters from showering and making it horrible? Like, that's a crazy idea to put a bathroom up there.
But it's a great idea for business. It's going to lure all those bikers into their parking lot so that they can go to that restaurant and that CVS and that bank, whatever bank that's going to be. And that's really going to cause a lot more traffic. This actually is maybe not a good idea. So, you know, I think they're pandering to the wrong people.
Well, I'm sure they hope that that would be considered, you know, an incentive. But yeah, I think, you know, if the town has to maintain it, are they going to maintain it? There's a lot of questions about it. Will it be locked? Will it only be open from like 7 to 7 or something like that? I mean, there's a whole lot of questions about the bathroom and then the parking too. So, you know, so this drawing doesn't have like it has some detail, like it shows you where the dumpsters are. And it shows you where some handicaps are, but it doesn't show you like where are the lights and where are the electric vehicle charging stations and, you know, a lot of things like that too. And where is all the landscaping and so forth. So
where are the trees?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, that's what I was going to say too. I mean, just looking at it, it doesn't have even, you know, just rudimentary, you know, we're going to keep trees by this place, or, you know, this is where the plantings are going to be. It's just the layout, you know, the footprint of what they want to put in, but doesn't show anything that they want to keep.
right. Essentially what it shows is the number of buildings and their locations, what they're proposing. So they're proposing to have them fairly close to the lot lines. They have managed to now, you know, put the parking away from the street. So you don't drive by and see a big parking lot, but there's still a big parking lot. There's a lot of impervious surface there. So.
And they say something about at like the front of the buildings now face the roads, right?
Right.
Is 2 supposed to be the CVS, or it looks
It says
gigantic?
retail. Like they're not saying who the tenants would be.
So the restaurant is the only one we know that's 5 guys?
We don't know that even
Yeah.
right now. We just know that they've identified these would be the potential uses.
The zoning allows for up to 7,500 square feet.
Correct.
These are relatively small buildings, and by separating them, you know, in this way, it spreads the development out. In fact, you know, like if you were combine, for example, 3 and 4, you might be able to move the development again away from the throughway buffer.
Right.
And
you know, if you were to put 3 and 4 on top of 2, you know,
yeah,
for the second floor, I mean, you could get away with, and then you could have a lot more vegetation and stuff. But you know, so we need to just they're totally not convinced that the second floor is going to work for them for some reason. So
Can I ask about the buffer? If there's a requirement for 30 feet and the recommendation is for 65, and they're offering, I think, 15, why?
not even, they're not offering any buffer.
But why is that not raising any flags? I just don't understand why that's not an issue for the planning board.
well, the planning board has not yet, you know, it's only received these documents. We have not yet reviewed them and discussed them as a board. So, you know, these are all a lot of questions to, you know, this is just what the applicant has presented and has chosen to focus on a couple of things that they would like to have. They're saying waived. You know, our attorney is going to have to comment on whether in fact these are waivers or variances.
I think we need to stick to our guns and go back to the old letters and say, you know, insist on the 65-foot vegetated buffer, keeping the Empire State Trail and the stormwater management out of that buffer, and, you know, reminding them that there are these other design standards written into the zoning related to preservation of natural features.
Right.
They've already refused the permeable asphalt. This looks like a lot of asphalt. You know, I'd prefer a resting place with shade trees instead of the bathroom. People want a public bathroom, they can go into CVS.
I think Ingrid's right. I mean, the buffer, I think is a very clever way of snaking the Empire State Trail through there. because it's like, who's going to say no? You're rerouting it instead of, you know, trees. You have the trail, which everyone's going to use. But just to me, I think to us, keep the buffer and put the Empire State Trail on the development side of the 65 feet instead of using that as the buffer.
Right.
I think we also have the traffic issue with all that going out into North Putt when we have the, you know, the new town hall, the police, like all that going into the fire station. Again, we go back to that traffic. I don't know if that we should have something to say about that since we are environmental. It really concerns me with, well, the construction that's going on North Putt to have all that traffic flow going in and out left and right. You're going to have fire trucks going down there. You're going to have, you know, isn't the police moving there as well? Who's all moving in that?
I think it's a little it's too late for us to bring up. I mean, we can bring up those concerns, but the attorney said essentially because those things were known as possibilities at the time of seeker and they were considered, that it's kind of beyond, like they can't go back and reopen seeker because of that, because it was already discussed at the time that they did seeker.
Right. Their traffic study took into account, in fact, you know, part of one of the things they were supposed to do was supply the town with this light control so that when the fire department vehicle needed to pull out, that they took over control of the lights and stopped, you know, all direction red lights until the fire trucks got out. So that was definitely well in the plans, and the possibility of the new town hall / the police department building was known, even though the details perhaps or the timing was not specific.
This was years ago. This was years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, my one comment with all the traffic studies are like each one looks at each individual project and not all the projects together. And that's what's happened. And I know that was a big one with Stevie Turk's project. You know, like they were looking at just their one thing and not all the other things that were happening on 299. And this is the same thing. I can't imagine them thinking that you know, their thing may be fine if they didn't have all the other things, and they've never been able to do that because everything's happening at the same time.
So Wildberry actually, when they did their traffic study, had to acknowledge the fact that this project was, you know, potentially there. It's the last project that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they're the one that ends up usually with the brunt of the whole thing because it's all more real. But I have to. Traffic studies are very, there are lots and lots and lots of numbers and pages and pages and pages of data that at the end of the day always say this project will have no significant impact on traffic. I don't know how that always works out, but that's how they do.
So process-wise,
yes.
I mean, you know, usually we make decisions based on everything being in place. They've submitted half a plan with half, we'll say, their requests. You know, a lot of it unsaid with some of the other things that they're either directly asking for or by what's shown here is resulting in asking for other waivers or things. I mean, so, I mean, tell me about the process. Does the planning board give, I mean, they just say, you just got to give us a whole package, or what? I mean, we're struggling with how to make decisions or recommendations based on half a submittal. I assume the planning board is too. So how does that work from here?
Right. So I mean, what we have as a full application from them is for a different layout. You know, for a different number of buildings and a different. You know, some of it's sort of similar. The entrance and exits from the roads haven't changed, but the rest of it's kind of a little bit different. So we would need, you know, a full set of drawings, and they still, as far as part of the development agreement, needed to provide, you know, full landscaping plans and integrated pest management and a lot of other things that were still you know, we hadn't gotten that far. We had kind of gotten through seeker, and then, you know, various things. And then the moratorium happened, and it stopped, and now they finally come back to us with this revised plan that, you know, attempts to address the new code, the new zoning in that area, but not completely. So I wouldn't, from the planning board standpoint, I would not consider this one drawing to be like, oh, I'm like you, I can't make, you know, final determination on this. There's still too many questions, and there's still, you know, these issues of things they want to do that aren't complying with the code. So
so is it, I'm sorry, can I just, so it seems almost as if they are completely unprepared. They've ignored certain aspects of requirements, and they are asking for variances or waivers in kind of a half-assed way for some of the other things. Why do they think they have a leg to stand on? I guess I just don't understand why, how this project could possibly move forward as it is currently conceptualized by them.
Or can it? I mean, that's what I'm looking for too. I mean, do we just leave it as simply, you've presented a lot of ideas here, but we need to see a full submittal? I mean, is that what happened? I'm just looking, you know, back to.
I think we need to press the same issues we raised earlier and say these have not been addressed in this plan, and that we expect that, you know, the next complete plan you present will include a 65-foot buffer and those other things. I mean, I think they're looking for feedback before they invest in those more detailed drawings. And so this is the stage to just reiterate the feedback that we gave before. I don't know if it's our place to talk about, you know, the issue of the drive-through or the second story on the buildings. I'm not sure. If
from an environmental standpoint, from an ENC board, I would say not, other than the fact that the drive-through in and of itself, because it's, you know, it's not allowed. It's only not allowed for restaurant use. And if you ask why, it's because the committee and then the town board felt that they did not want this to turn into a de facto throughway rest stop, where people just knew that they could jump off at our exit, run in here, go through the drive-through, and then jump back on. Because
Well,
that
that's
would
obviously what they want.
Yes.
Well, whatever. I mean, you remember, or maybe you don't. When we had the McDonald's project, that manager told us that 75-80% of his business was drive-through. So there are some types of food facilities that are known for drive-throughs, you know, and so certainly those are the only ones in town. McDonald's and Burger King, those are the ones that have the drive-throughs. Everything else does not have drive-throughs. So maybe that's, you know, the tenants that they're hoping to you know, bring onto this site, which are
A fast food place, you're saying, like a fast
well,
food?
not local chain, not locally owned mom and pops, but yeah, probably, you know, businesses that are known throughout the country, through the Northeast. So I would think that's probably what they're looking for. And those businesses would say, well, we typically have a drive-through. So I don't know. I'm guessing right now, since they haven't identified what this restaurant would be. So I mean, yes, it's a traffic issue, which is an environmental issue in terms of, you know, that it could affect that. They did their traffic study with that in mind, that they were going to have a drive-through restaurant. They were also going to have a drive-through for the CVS, which they don't show a drive-through for building number 2 right now. They show it for what would be the bank number 4, that people, I guess, could drive up, like, you know, do a drive-up ATM kind of thing. Which we have that one at, Ulster Savings has one, and JP Morgan Chase has one.
Bank of America has one.
Yeah.
They have a drive-through. I know they have a drive-up. They have a drive-through as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So is the New York Bank, the one next to the new development.
Riverside.
Salisbury, Riverside.
Good.
Okay. So,
Wells
yeah,
Fargo has a drive-through too.
who
So
does?
Wells Fargo.
Wells
will
Fargo.
someone
that
volunteer
does.
to put together some preliminary, kind of just basic comments, going back to the prior letters and pointing out these issues? I did copy the designs. I can send, I copied the design standards from the new zoning relating to the vegetated buffer along the thruway, tree preservation, and existing grades being preserved. I think we should just present those verbatim and say, these have not been addressed, or these are not addressed in this plan.
One thing just to
I
visually,
will work on it. I'll work on it with Susan.
great.
Just a quick thing, I Googled Five Guys drive-throughs, and of 10 years ago, no Five Guys had a drive-through. So it looks like they might be going for more of a fast food place, like a Wendy's or something.
Totally don't know. They have
Yeah.
not, I mean, we don't know.
Do they have to get, like, say in some other world, this whole site plan was approved. Did they have to then have it approved again when they decide what types of businesses are there? Or
No.
once it's approved, they could put anything they want in there?
As long as it meets the permitted uses for that zone.
So it could be it could be fast food, it could be any kind of restaurant, it could be a giant drugstore, it could be.
It could
Right,
be,
so
yeah. Mhm.
The only thing that has to be is, wait, I was looking, number 4, the bank, and which is the one that said, I have this on a different screen, wait.
1 is a restaurant, and then 2 and 3 are retail.
Okay, wait, I just wanted to do that.
Yeah, originally where 4 is where the Five Guys was going to be, and then this big CVS was going to kind of span the 3-to-1 area, and then down at the end where they've got the Empire State thing, they were going to eventually put a bank or some kind of business down there.
I'm just surprised they didn't put a drive-in for 2, because if that's where the CVS was going to be, I would
It
think.
may not be a CVS anymore, it just
Yeah.
says retail. We don't know what it is.
I think, the idea that it's a CVS or even a Five Guys at this point, I think I don't know how other to say it. I think that is gone, or if it's gone, it might be coming back, but I don't think well.
How big, like the space that it says for number 2, it gives the square footage as 7,000, right?
7,100. Mhm.
Right, so what else, like what store around is that big? I'm just trying to visualize it.
Well, the existing Walgreens, I think, was somewhere between 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, something like that. So that's the existing Walgreens. So it'd be smaller than the existing, what used to be Rite Aid, which is now Walgreens.
Thank you.
Half the mall across the street by ShopRite is empty. What's the
The dollar store, whatever it was, moved out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
that
was it babies, whatever the babies, there's something moved out, but Caremark has moved in there, and I think they may ultimately be wanting to expand into the remainder of that space.
Isn't ShopRite supposed to, I was remembering ShopRite was going to expand to the right there and take over that next lot with where Crazy Joe's was, or where Joe's East West. Wasn't that?
Right. So there was one time talk of ShopRite expanding. Then there was a different project where the people that own the whole ShopRite Plaza were looking at putting in savings and loan in that area where that little old house and Joe's is, and putting in, so it was going to be another banking type institution, but that hasn't come back to us.
We'll have a lot of money. Okay. I just didn't know what happened with that, because I remember hearing about the ShopRite thing.
Yeah, we haven't, nothing else has come before the planning board.
Quick question. What happened to the land that was supposed to be reserved for forest, or to preserve part of it?
Well, if you go to the tippy tip, the little pointy tip, I guess maybe that's where they were. it's not quite showing on all of you. Yeah, that little part right there.
Yeah, I mean, they don't specify.
They don't specify.
They would preserve any vegetation. Presumably, they would preserve this little area here.
Yeah, at one point they had kind of said something about that, but that was with the previous layout. So this doesn't show any trees at all, so we really don't know,
Yeah.
what the thinking is as far as anything like that. It's mostly meant to show the buildings and the driveways and parking areas, I think.
Since the meeting is on Monday, Ted, would it make more sense for me to just kind of pull some of the bullet points from our prior letters and give those to you? And
Well, certainly I'll get a hold of the letter that we had. I mean, I can, go through that, but as long as, Rose and Susan have volunteered to do a letter, I mean, I think that's fine. But before that was said, I think, the idea of a letter to me would be just, please see the letter of 1 year ago. Many of the items have not been addressed, and just leave it at that.
Well, I do think we need to emphasize the buffer and make that a deal breaker. It's a deal breaker. We have to have the 65-foot buffer.
So what I think would be helpful is you keeping in mind that typically what happens is the EnCB speaks during the public comment section. And so I think if you have points you want to make, even though they were made previously, you can refer back to the fact that these were points or items from, whatever, but I think you should restate them for the record and to get it back into everyone's minds. This attorney is a new, I believe this is a different attorney than has worked with this before. So she may or may not have looked at all of that or just been looking at the code, the zoning code and working from there.
So it would be kind of reiterating, like maybe giving an introduction, like these are the points that were made before. We need to reiterate these because these have not been addressed. Bang, 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 kind of.
Yeah. Never assume that anyone remembers anything, guys.
No, and you keep hammering the same points in again. These were not addressed.
They keep refusing to do them.
okay, I will send the previous letters and this section of the code. And could you send around a draft letter by Saturday evening?
Mm-hmm.
And then we could do any editing on Sunday.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I think before we get away from it, and I know we talked about it, but we haven't talked about it was said that the second floor issue may not be an environmental issue. I guess I would disagree. I think the density issue is a key factor for me. I think, if we have more density, if we have more, tighter footprints, then that does preserve other areas outside of this site. So, I mean, the second floor, the third floor, the increased density is an environmental issue, in my view, for that purpose.
Yeah, I agree with Ted on that point. And just because I think we all agree with the gateway zoning, right? I mean, it's got passed, it is what it is. That's kind of a comprehensive view that takes everything into account. So if the first project in there gets waivers from it, then, I think you can start breaking it down per environmental reasons, per, aesthetic reasons, all of those different things. I think that's why the gateway passed, was because it brought together all of those concerns.
I also need to ask a question. Do they have the authority to reroute the Empire State Trail?
No, they're offering that. That would have to be agreed on by the state.
Forget it.
So that would be something that, I think at one point, the planning board had really been kind of pushing for it. And they at one point had said they might be interested, and at another point they said, no, it's off the table. So now it's back because they know it was something the planning board had thought would be a good idea, but I don't think the planning board intended for it to be in lieu of the vegetative buffer. And I can't imagine, this property line, what's below that is the DOT right-of-way leading down to the thruway, which, the DOT keeps it mowed and there's not trees there. So it would be a very, not particularly to me, a lovely place to be walking and biking with, you know, no shade, just with the thruway right below you there. So,
Right, this throughway exhaust. The throughway is loud, by the way. The
Oh, yeah.
Tin Horn Uprising band that I play in tried to rehearse outdoors in a parking lot at the Ulster County Unitarian Church on the throughway. We couldn't even hear each other.
yeah.
So I really think that that's just an invasive thing, and that's definitely got to go. You know, tell them the New York way. Forget about it.
Also bring up sidewalks, you know, sidewalk along North Putt corners. That's not shown on here, and that's something we've repeatedly brought up.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if they think this is taking the, yeah. So you can see the crosswalk. You can see the sidewalk coming in at the corner there of the intersection. And then you see what's, I guess, the current Empire State Trail going down along Putt, but they're saying, well, they would, you know, I don't know, it's already there, right? You know, I mean, like the state's already put it in, so I don't know what would be supposed to happen to it.
Wait, were you, which spot? Point to the,
I mean, that's really just like a wide shoulder. It's not a sidewalk. So
right.
We want a sidewalk. You know, that there's issues with pedestrians coming up Henry Du Bois. People might want to go shopping in this plaza. There needs to be a sidewalk for people to safely access this area.
Right. It's not the Empire State Trail. It's a sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's move along, if there aren't any other comments right now, to the Homeland Towers project. I don't have this downloaded on this computer though.
So from a seeker standpoint, one of the real items there that's still, you know, is the wetlands and the location of things versus the wetlands and the impingement on the buffers, and whether they could relocate things to avoid. They're never in the wetlands per se, but they're in the buffer zone, and whether they could relocate things to avoid that. So that's what came out of the wetland inspector's report, and the fact that they would be cutting down 6 trees. You know, if they relocated to avoid the buffer, could they also avoid those trees, or would there be other trees or whatever? So yeah, you have that drawing, Ingrid?
This is slow.
Oops.
Let's see. There's the EAF.
Which we haven't done yet, by the way. Part 2 hasn't happened. That's what we need to do pretty quickly.
There's all the bald eagle stuff. Okay. So this is, so yeah, I was trying to find where the existing right-of-way map was, like with the existing gravel road.
Well, so it only goes part way. You know, there's the other one up there at the top of the screen that comes in by those buildings off the road. It looks like they probably use that as driveways, yeah. And then this one, it starts off the road there, and there's a building right there they're using as a bed and breakfast. And then after that, it kind of meanders, and you can, yeah, right about there, Ingrid, just above, you see that little double, yeah, I think that's part of it right there. So, but it you know, in the past, it didn't go all the way. Then it was kind of grassy. It was,
is that maybe?
yeah,
Here.
just kind of, right. And so you can see where the large dashed line is the buffer area.
Yeah, so this is out of the buffer area here.
Some of it, yeah,
It's coming basically right between these two wetland buffers.
Right. And then it's where the pad actually goes, that it's into the, so the question, I think what Mark had thought was, well, why don't you move it back to where there's more space between those two buffers and put the pad more well, there are, you know, even anywhere between the, yeah, anywhere in there. Why push it so far back? I think they were trying, maybe they thought from a visibility thing, the further they got from the street, the better. I'm also not sure about elevation, if they were trying to get, if there's a little bit of elevation going that way, that they were trying to get, you know, the benefit of every little bit they could. But and then I think also their setbacks are required. I think it's double the footage. So I think they had the 300-foot setback requirement. So it's like twice the height. So they were also.
That's from here, right?
Well, yeah.
The sides.
Why is it pointing to that one part where it says proposed 100-foot buffer? That's a little confusing too. What is that supposed to? What do you mean proposed 100-foot? Proposed, oops. Proposed lessee 100-foot buffer. What does that? I don't know what that means.
The people, the tower is leasing the land from the landowner. Remember, the landowner
right.
couldn't afford to pay his taxes, so he's leasing the land to Verizon, wherever it is.
Right. I'm just not sure what they're trying to designate there. The wetlands is the diagonal lines. That's the, so why they're pointing to that, I don't quite understand. They're saying they'll, I don't know, they're barely out. You know, the road is not the problem. It's the pad that's the problem.
Yeah, the road is pretty much pre-existing. You could drive in there on your.
I was wondering why this wetland isn't, like, the edge of it doesn't seem to be fully shown on these maps, right?
Right.
It ends here and you're like, well, where does it go?
Oh yeah, it just got dry. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, maybe they're just indicating the edge of it and they felt like that, you know, it does that all along. They don't take it all the way across anywhere. So.
But this is the part that's closest to the project. So
right.
Important.
That's the part they're paying attention to, right? So clearly they're not, you know, 100 feet away from it at that point. So I mean, maybe we need to go back to Mark's report.
So yeah, I mean, to reiterate Mark's recommendation that it be placed somewhere around here.
Mm-hmm. Now they're saying they would have to cut more trees down because, you know, that little scallopy thing supposedly is a tree line. Yeah. I mean, where it is, they're cutting down 6 trees, including one very large old oak tree, which the landowner says is has problems of some kind. But,
yeah, they would cut down more trees if it was moved out, and plus it'd be closer to the road, and it might be more visible.
It's hard to know. Did anybody observe the balloon test?
I forgot.
No, but I looked through the report. I mean, it really doesn't seem like it's visible from very many places at all.
No, it wasn't visible from my house.
I drove around, John and I got in the car and drove all around every which way trying to find it. And I mean, really, except for being on Jansen Road and one other road that runs down on the end there, you could see it, but otherwise, you know, it really wasn't. I mean, now they put the balloon at I think though they put the balloon at the 125 foot and not the 150 or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, there was, if you read the report, I think the balloon maybe, yeah. But it was not, I was expecting to be like surprised at, you know, seeing this big balloon everywhere, but it wasn't. I think you could see it from 32, part of South 32 at one point. But.
I personally don't have a great many, you know, concerns about this project. I mean, I feel like it minimizes tree clearing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're kind of using it for the most part an existing right of way, an existing access road to get back there.
Right.
I don't think this is a significant impact to the wetland buffer.
And the road is meant to be used infrequently, you know, it's not like a daily use. This thing is not like something that someone has to go and maintain on a daily or even weekly basis. It's, you know, there's not going to be a lot of traffic on that road after the building is done.
Mm-hmm. And then Rose and I did try to look up, you know, some research on potential impacts on pollinators. It seems like there hasn't been a whole lot of research yet, but that what's known so far suggests there isn't a great threat. You know, there may be a slight impact in the very near vicinity of a tower, like within 100 or 200 yards of the tower, but it's not a widespread impact.
Right.
Not a substantial impact. So
this picture, this one right here, I mean, if you show that picture again, Ingrid, not that one, but the document picture that had the cell tower on it.
the document.
Yeah, the one the most recently had up.
Oh, this is an article she just sent.
But see that picture of that cell tower? Here, the trees are up at least halfway up that. And that's when you're standing, you know, very near to it. So back from the road, it's not like it's going to look like that, like it's on a flat prairie. It's got trees all around it. So
For me, this article was the thing that made me stop looking, because the American Bee Journal is, you know, peer reviewed and everything, and they said it's not going to hurt bees. So
okay, well, that's very reassuring that they feel that way about it.
mm-hmm.
So that's good. Okay, so we don't need to address that then. Or you guys don't.
It wasn't going to be 5G.
He did tell us in the tour that it wasn't going to be 5G.
Right.
Didn't he tell us that?
Well,
and they
the
said
goal ultimately is 5G, but not currently.
when I went to the original planning board meeting, right, they said it wouldn't be used for that because if when we did 5G, we'd have to have towers everywhere. You know, they'd have to be so many more towers. Didn't they? I thought, trying to remember. Right, but it would not be in the near future, no matter what.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right.
Does anyone else have specific concerns that we should raise?
Well, my only concern is that they didn't put the balloon up as high as the tower's going to go. What the, you know?
Yeah, I mean, read the report, but that's what I thought I remembered was that it wasn't at the highest height they might have been looking for. So, but anyway, it's, you know, I was surprised at how little the balloon looked from just about anywhere that you could see it, even though it was 4 feet in diameter. It was far enough back in there that it just really didn't look like too much of anything. So
Yeah,
well,
it's isolated and there's a lot of vegetation to cover it up. It's
yeah.
If there are no further comments, then I would tell Pat that we have no comments right now.
Okay. Like I said, it's not officially on the agenda for the 13th.
Yeah.
We have to do seeker. So
Do you want to do a vote on that, Ingrid? I mean, I'm fine. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that would be good.
I would move that after discussion of this issue, that the Environmental Conservation Board should not to comment on the, or not to further comment on the on this project, Homeland Towers.
1 second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, looks like Susan stepped away. Oh, you. Hi there.
Susan, we just voted on a motion to have no further comment.
I can't hear you, Susan.
You're muted.
I had to yell something to my son. I'm sorry. I had to jump up for a minute. I voted. I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
So if the location stays as it is, I think there probably has to be a permit.
Yes.
Planning board will have to grant. So.
Okay. All right, so back to our agenda.
Oh, just so you know, though, this one, you know, it is before the ZBA potentially as a variance. That's all. Okay.
You guys are seeing the agenda here, right? Okay, so we settled our schedule. So the next item is a community preservation fund update. So it's been very exciting. Things are moving at warp speed ahead. The community preservation plan was completed. It was presented to the town board, and along with 3 local laws that need to be adopted to establish the community preservation fund, to adopt the plan, and to establish, kind of set the real estate transfer tax that would then go on to the ballot measure in November. There was a lot of lack of clarity around what exemption level would be allowed from, you know, the way the legislation is written. It says that the median home value of the locality may be exempted from the tax, but we weren't sure how that would be determined. And finally, we got an answer from the Department of Taxation and Finance that it would be based on the county median value, which is substantially lower than our town median home value. The town median value we've calculated is currently probably somewhere around $319,000. And the county value is $245,000. So that kind of goes into the calculation of like, well, how the tax is on the sale of a home, the price above that median value, and it could be up to 2% tax. And I was gone all last week, and I guess Neil decided he wanted to go ahead with a full 2%, exempting the median value, and that is what was noticed and or what was presented at that meeting. And a public hearing is set for next Thursday, July 16th, on these 3 local laws. And there's still apparently some potential room for adjusting that real estate transfer tax value. Our advisors from the Trust for Public Land are encouraging the town to go for a lower value, because the polling that they did back in May was only for a 0.75% tax. It would have been a lower exemption, like a $100,000 exemption. And even that polled, like, the number of positives to that was 52%. We don't have a lot of wiggle room necessarily. We're going to have to run a very strong campaign to pass this referendum. So I personally think they should lower that value. I think, you know, for a $300,000 home, the 2% tax would be like an $1,100 fee on the sale of a home that in theory is paid by the buyer of the home. But you know how things go with real estate transactions. So, but anyway, it's very exciting that we have made it this far and that the plan is completed, and the town board voted unanimously to advance these laws and open the public hearing. So it seems that the town board is supporting going ahead with this. And we're looking for support at that public hearing. And if any of you are available, it's going to be held on Zoom. And so you'll be able to like sign up in the chat box with your name, and then you could give a comment for up to 3 minutes. I don't know if any of you have listened into any of the recent town board meetings, but they did that for the police commission town hall that they did recently.
Sorry, what is the date for that?
Next Thursday, July 16th, and I will circulate some like a fact sheet about it and some talking points that you're free to use. I will open up the website. There's a great page dedicated to this project now. for the Community Preservation Task Force. I wish I need a lesson in how they set this up, because it's like they created this beautiful page using the town website. So all the documents are here. There's Q&A about the plan and fund, the proposed locals laws, all the past presentations, the plan itself. There's a lot of material there. But the bottom line is, so this would set up a fund. If a 2% tax is raised, it's estimated that would generate $240,000 a year. That would go into a dedicated fund that could be used for the acquisition of open space lands, including, farmland, natural areas, areas for recreation, areas with scenic or historic value. So that it could be outright purchase of property or purchase of conservation easements, could be used and would likely be used to leverage significant outside funding sources for additional preservation efforts, which is what has happened in the other towns that have this mechanism in place. And, we've spoken a lot with people from Red Hook, which have this in place and have been able to preserve thousands of acres of farmland, and, they're made their community a very desirable place to live. Not that New Paltz isn't desirable already, but this would be a very good thing for the community, and would not affect taxpayers. Anybody who already owns a property or lives in the town would not be subject to this tax. It's only people who are moving in and buying a home. That's worth more than the median home value.
So Ingrid, just to clarify, because I missed at the beginning. So the 2% or 3/4% or wherever that's applied to the county median or the town median?
The county median. So that it would be adjusted every year. Currently that's 245, but over time it would go up.
Okay.
Like I said, for a home that's 300,000, you would be taxed on the $55,000 difference there. If it's a 2% tax, it would be $1,100. That can be financed into the mortgage, like other closing costs.
Right, and that's set by statute or by law. That's not one of our choices, right? The percentage is a choice, but not the
yes. The percentage is a choice. It would be really great to have some members of the environmental board participate in the hearing and speak out in favor, and really just talk about the benefits of conserving natural areas and open spaces in the community. And Yogi, you're muted.
So just, I'm sorry, Ted asked the question and I still don't think I understand. So the median price of a house in Ulster County is, you said, $245,000 or so. So yeah. Anybody who has a house of $245,000 or lower, when they purchase it, doesn't pay this tax. But if your house is higher, is valued at a higher level than that, then you pay the 2% on the difference. So whatever that is, right?
Of the actual sale price.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So looking back,
the way you're describing it though is annual. This is only one time.
It's a one-time
transaction.
Yeah, no, I understood that. I was just trying to get a sense of how this was calculated. So if we're going with the Ulster County median, which is much lower, then people buying a house in New Paltz would end up paying more.
Well, only people in New Paltz would pay this because it would only exist in New Paltz. This is a New Paltz law. Other communities in Ulster County could pursue this.
Right. I get that.
But according to recent transaction data, I think about 40% of our home sales are below that value. So 60% of home sales would pay something into the fund.
Great, thank you. That was very good.
So in what this will do, so the next steps, there's a public hearing. If they decide to lower the transfer tax amount down to 1.5% or 1%, for example, they would have to extend the public hearing and probably hold a special meeting on July 30th. And at that point, they would probably pass these laws, because the ballot measure has to go to the Board of Elections with extra time this year because of the COVID situation. And so then we are trying to fundraise, or I don't know, I don't really know exactly how we're fundraising it. Our conservation partners are trying to fundraise a substantial amount of money for us to run this campaign, to hire a professional campaign company that's going to develop the materials, to do direct mailing, to do digital campaigning, but we're going to need volunteers also to do phone banking and possibly canvassing, or whatever is possible based on the COVID situation. We don't really know how much opposition might materialize to this, but there will undoubtedly be opposition from realtors and builders. So that's kind of where things are at right now. I don't know if there are questions about it, or if any of you are. Yeah.
Does it apply just to single family residential transactions, or does it apply to apartment buildings or commercial properties, or what?
I don't know exactly how that settled out, whether it also applies to commercial, and how it applies to vacant land. I don't know. I can pick up.
Ingrid, I just had a question. You mentioned something about like obviously the buyer of the house incurs the cost, but you said something about people moving into the town. So if your residence is already New Paltz and you buy another home in New Paltz, you're exempt from that?
No, any new purchase in New Paltz would be subject to this if the value is above the median county value.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I mean, in general, this is the buyer is supposed to pay it, but sometimes in negotiations, sellers end up,
Right. Either way, your example of the $300,000 house, $1,100 is going to be deposited into the preservation fund.
Yeah.
From the sale. It doesn't really matter how it goes after negotiations, but that's the deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this would kind of replace the bond spending that the town still has over $1 million, I think, in the open space bond. But every time the town spends bond money, it costs all property owners in our property taxes. We're paying for that. And so this is a way of helping to do projects like establishing the Millbrook Preserve or expanding that without everyone having to pay. It's really, people are buying into the community. It's almost like, you're paying an extra fee that's helping to ensure the community stays an attractive place to live.
Ingrid, is it going to be possible to either, have someone from Red Hook speak, or to get some data? Because I know they've said not only the amount of money that they've raised over the years, but also that their property values have stayed good or even increased. Is there a way to get some of that information into the public comments or hearing so that they're on the record?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think, we've been in contact with the supervisor there and with some realtors there even, who have been very positive about the impact, like how great it's been for Red Hook and how it hasn't impacted their work at all, or been an issue for buyers. So I don't know if any of them will be able to participate in the hearing, but maybe they could submit a written comment. I think it's most important for people in New Paltz to comment, though. Yeah, but to have that information out there. I think I haven't looked at the latest fact sheet information, but I don't know if we were able to pull together the hard numbers on home values in Red Hook, for example. It's hard to attribute those sorts of changes to any one policy.
Right. But certainly if the realtor's experience is that it hasn't, that they haven't had a problem with home sales in Red Hook versus Tivoli or, someplace that doesn't have it, that's encouraging information, because otherwise you're going to have people being scared about it.
I think that's one of the advantages of the Zoom format too. They don't even have to travel to New Paltz. We just I think the bigger thing is, are they allowed to comment?
Sure they are.
If they're
Anyone
not
in the
allowed
public.
to comment, they could just, someone could speak, for them or whatever. But I think it's worth looking into if it's allowable. If it's allowable, then.
According to the Department of State, public hearing is open to the public. Doesn't matter where you live.
The open meetings law.
Yeah. But they could prepare a document that someone could read, but yeah, either way.
All right. Well, feel free to follow up with me if you have questions about it. I'll send around that material, the Q&A sort of stuff for the public hearing. All right. So Ted, do you want to give an update?
I do, yes. So because of a scheduling, just because of the way June and July are a little bit unusual, the order flips. So actually, since the Environmental Policy Board, the Village Board, has not met yet this month. We meet next week. And last month, the Environmental Policy Board met just before this meeting. So, in actuality, the update I gave last time to the Environmental Conservation Board, to this board, was the latest update of our meetings. But however, next week we have our meeting, so I'll update that for next week. But we have had some interesting things happen, since then outside of the meetings, which I'll choose to update you guys with. The Village Planning Board is still seeking some new members. Plastic bags, the effort is stalled, but we're waiting for virus issues to settle down and then go back after that. We're waiting for feedback from the state, other state agencies or efforts in regards to reviewing or updating idling laws in the community. So it's a project, but we're waiting to get feedback from others from that. And then, last time at the Environmental Conservation Board, I presented a preview of the MS4 stormwater report. I did that at the Village Environmental Policy Board too, and that is now on the town's website. The public comment period is still open for the next couple of days. So if you haven't had a chance, take a look at it, see if there's any comments. If there's any questions, let me know. I can certainly address those. And then, okay, so we meet again next week, Tuesday, 6:30, Zoom, just like this. For that. And then, okay, so the Village Planning Board meeting was yesterday. We got a quick report on it because Don will be out of town next week. So we have an advance report from the Environmental Policy Board. There was 4 items of interest. One was that nothing more was said or occurred in regards to the Lalo Group project. So there's no news, no update, no new information on that. Jack's Rhythms at 56 Main Street is considering changing from a retail to a restaurant. There's no Environmental Policy Board meeting, or there's no environmental policy issues because it's a change in use. So it's on the planning board, but there's no expected or anticipated environmental issues with that. 85 Chestnut Street, though, is a new project. It is the auto place right across the street from Net Zero. There is a sketch that's similar, but we'll say smaller than the Net Zero project across the street, but it was more of a pre-application meeting or present, to get on people's radar. The Environmental Policy Board asked the following types of questions. They wanted to know more about what was planned specifically for this project. Is it going to have any rain gardens, any other public spaces, public restrooms, trail access? What about energy efficiency, solar, geothermal, and demolition and construction practices? So those questions were put on the table, but because it was just a first blush or first presentation, that we'll wait to see for later.
So it's for similar, like an apartment complex? Or
so what they're comparing it to is the Ridge Apartments, 58 South Manheim, over by Soup. They'll have retail on the first floor, and then 2 floors of residential above it. They're calling it a smaller version of Net Zero, closer to the look and feel of the Ridge Apartments. And that's basically the architectural feedback we've got. But there's a box cut out closer to the intersection, parking in the back and to the side for that project.
The Ridge has no retail.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Right, there's no retail there.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's retail and commercial on the first floor, residential on the top 2 floors, with an overall look similar to the Ridge Apartments. That siding, the roofing material, the trim, those kind of things. That's what the representatives were describing its intended look as.
It appears that whole corridor there, they're going to be putting up 3, and they claim net zero is 3 stories, but with the other stuff on top of it, it's almost like 4 stories. It's tall, and I think everyone that passes through town now, there's like a shadow. It changed so much of the look of North Chestnut. It's amazing. And then with another apartment complex right next to it, it's certainly going to change the whole feeling of that. And then with the big Stewarts across the street, that's what I don't understand, because people are saying they want to keep the charm and the feeling. And that was the reason for some of these laws being passed. And yet they're putting up 3 and 3.5 story buildings all along 32. And I know we're not a planning board, but it certainly does change the whole feeling and look of our town and village.
Commercializing an awful lot of space.
Yeah.
It's quite deliberate to try to keep the development in the dense part of New Paltz, which is the village, and not have it sprawling out into the open areas of the town.
Although I'd like to make the point that developing density in the village does nothing to prevent sprawl outside the town. For that, we need additional code or things like a community preservation fund to help protect.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's why you're getting so much support for the community preservation fund. But it doesn't mean that property owners will necessarily jump to sell you their, there's that part. That's still a voluntary thing. So code is, you're right, code.
Right, they did change the code to put the net zero in. And now that code is altered, I just have this fear that all those little businesses across there are all going to sell. So, they'll get good money for it, and then they'll put up all these 3 and 4 story structures. It just starts changing the whole look of a town. So it's sad. When I heard about it a couple of weeks ago, I just was like, here we go. And it started with the net zero.
Gentrification. Where's Terrific going to go? Whatever happened to him?
It's staying there.
He's staying there.
Yeah, he's staying there.
Yeah.
Do you know, just in case you don't, that you probably have seen it already, but Stewart's is selling the old Oliver house, the one on the corner, the condemned house. They're selling that to the village for $1. The village has put up a thing. It's been on social media. I guess it will be in the paper next week about that. Someone can move that if they want to. And then we're going to be setting up kind of either it will be the starting place for some type of possible Black History tour or some kind of space for a kiosk with some information about the early Black history of New Paltz. So that corner there is going to be made kind of like park-like, which I'm hoping. Whereas before Stewart's, I don't know what Stewart's was going to do with it. So they're being really good about it. They're giving the village that space from where the house was. So, and they're going to keep the footprint of where the house was intact so that people can kind of look at that space because it was constructed partly by an early Black builder, but also because the house was this Civil War widow. There was a lot of interesting history around that whole community there. So I hope I'm going to be working on that.
Great.
And then the last item with the village planning board was a discussion about Stewart's. There is a delay in being able to get the poles for the traffic light that would go at Henry Du Bois and State Road 32. That would preclude any kind of construction in 2020. So they're saying the traffic light would be at least until 2021. So Stewart's is requesting a temporary certificate of occupancy for 12 months to allow them to construct and open their new facility soon. The store construction would put in the, we'll say the physical improvements, the added turn lane, the road widening, and other required improvements. They would open the store. And then after the parts came in later on, after the opening of the store, they would install the traffic light then. The temporary nature of the certificate of occupancy would ensure them that the light would be installed soon. The planning board has to decide yet on this issue. So it was just first presented, first talked about, but that's on their docket. Stewart's provided a traffic study. Planning board asked for additional analysis, and yeah, they're waiting to hear back for additional. So it'll be discussed at the next planning board meeting for the village. And those are the 4 items: Lalo, Jack's Rhythms, Chestnut Street, Stewart's.
Do we know what's going to happen to the old Stewart's?
From what I've heard, Stewart's plans to sell that property. So they're putting it on
Put
the
up
market.
another 3-story building.
I don't think it's in the zone.
I don't think it is either. It's right along the Trib 13 in there, right? Okay.
I don't know for sure though. But I've heard that somewhere that it's not in the zone.
Hope not.
So Janelle couldn't make it, but she sent her Climate Smart newsletter, and it mentions a new initiative that will do some new floodplain mapping in New Paltz with assistance from the Woods Hole Research Center. And I guess the work is ongoing with the Climate Smart Resiliency Planning Tool. Amanda, do you want to say anything about the NRI and the meeting that's coming up?
Right. So it's hard to try and find a date and time that works for everyone. And we certainly have to, make sure that the consultants and our DEC manager, Nate, are able to make, their availability is key. So it seems to have landed on July 29th in the afternoon at 1:30 p.m. So I apologize because Rich for sure told me he could not make that date, but I'm hoping that the rest of the EnCB could. It'll be a Zoom meeting to look at the base maps. We've looked, not the base, to look at the other maps. We've, based on the base map that we've all reviewed a couple of times, we'll get a first look at the other maps and also flesh out a little bit more what they're looking at for the report and get a better idea of timelines. So I don't anticipate that it's going to be a long meeting. I think, an hour would be plenty, but I'm certainly hoping that you guys will be able to participate. as well as.
And I just have to say, Amanda, having led many of these meetings, going over maps myself for NRI projects, 1 hour is, I think, totally unrealistic for this.
Okay.
So,
Well, yeah.
I think you may look at a handful of maps in 1 hour, but I don't know how many maps he's made.
I don't either. See, this is all going to be like.
I mean, and yeah, there should be a list of maps, and everybody should have a chance to review them before the meeting.
Well, I'll ask him for that so that we can be prepared, because, we're going to have folks from, folks that, from CWASP, like Lynn and Kara and John will be on it. John Orfatelli from Historical Preservation. I'm hoping Susan will be able to make it as well. So we'll be looking at it from all different perspectives, and definitely want to get people's thoughts and feedback on it. So, right. So I'll definitely ask him for the list of maps. Perhaps that'll intrigue everybody to want to really be there at 1:30 on the 29th of July. So we'll see how that goes.
Taking my cue from the original email, I did not respond because I am okay with the time.
Thank you. That's what I'm assuming. Everyone I didn't hear from, so that's everyone but Rich, is going to be there. So that's great.
Calling me out, Amanda.
No, you had something super important to do, I'm quite sure. But
regular work, it's tough.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, but you've contributed so much. That's why you've been really, active on this. So I felt bad that you were the one person that couldn't make it. It's just really hard to find it because the consultants couldn't do the afternoon, the evening stuff. So yeah,
it's all right.
Okay. Just to let you know what's happening with these other two items, the Cornell Cooperative Extension contacted the town and village about doing this climate smart resiliency planning tool. So it's looking at different, it kind of builds off the vulnerability assessment, and it's looking at the functions and features of both the town and the village and how they might be impacted by more heat, higher overall temperatures, higher extreme heat events, more precipitation in the form of rainfall rather than snow, things like that. And they're going to be, so we'll be getting a draft, but they're moving along quite at a clip on this. They're going to be talking to the building inspectors and the highway DPW folks from both the town and village about some things, and we should see a draft from them by the end of July, early August, because they intend to present something to the joint town and village board on August 6th. So your next meeting, that'll be so this is something that'll happen online for everybody to see what this document is, just so that so you're informed. It's not requiring necessarily you to provide us with feedback, but certainly if you have thoughts or comments on it, we'd love to share it with the Cornell folks. But they're doing this for us for free, and that's great. So we're happy to have them work with us. We wanted them to also coordinate with, with anything that's happening with the NRI, but also with the flood mapping, the 100-year flood mapping folks who are just getting started, which they also came and offered to work with us for free. We got selected by ICLEI to be one of the communities that they would do this project for. So we're very excited about that, and they need some very detailed stuff that Ingrid, I hope I gave you as much as what I know about it, but they're looking for some things to make it less generic and more specific to our part of the Wallkill and what's happening here. And Neil felt that it was going to be informative for addressing code in the future, to know what we could expect. It's not just what it looks like now, but projections based on climate change modeling, to how the 100-year floods might occur more often than 100 years, and what parts of town they would impact. So anyway, as soon as we get more about that, once they got their hands on some specific information, they were going to, have a better feel for what they had to work with and come back to us with some timing on that. But there's because neither the town or village has a current project that would benefit from having this information right away. It's more like what to do going forward. We didn't give them a timeline or a deadline or anything like that. So, okay.
All right. So I didn't add any other items on the agenda because nobody sent me specific updates they wanted to give. But are there any other items people want to bring up? No. There were 2 training opportunities that my program is offering soon. Our next webinar is about streams on July 23rd, a basic introduction to values of streams and stream conservation principles. And then in early August, we're doing a webinar series program. It would have been a one-day program, in-depth program about protection of headwater streams and how to identify them remotely and in the field. And instead we're doing it as a 4-part webinar, like an hour and a half each afternoon, with a virtual field trip, which filmed in the Millbrook Preserve. And I'm now learning how to edit video to create this thing. So yeah, anyway, that's being offered the first week in August. And please remember to think about getting some training, as we talked about at the beginning of this year. These are good opportunities to do it. Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to add? All right.
No.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Need to
Night.
adjourn?
Night.
Yeah, can someone second that? All right, meeting adjourned. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you. See you. I can't hear you. All right, I'll see you.